Welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour DFS preview for UFC Fight Night Condit versus Alves.
No, Alves.
Alves?
Not a good way to start. You've already got a buzz.
Well, I guess this brings us to the point where I have to introduce the fact that I'm not the one who knows anything about the MMA. I know about the daily fantasy side, so every time that you hear me mispronounce a name, you will hear, because that's the way that it has to go. You, my friend, Cody Saftik, host of the Bookie Beatdown, is the man. Listen to me. I'm all out of sorts this morning. This afternoon. It's really terrible.
It happens.
But you're going to be breaking down the MMA side of this, so I've identified 4 fights right away that seem to make no sense to me, so let's get your opinion on it right now. Nicholas Dalby versus, oh, good Lord. All right, I'm going to take my time with this one.
You're going to go for it, all right.
Elizu Zaleski Dos Santos.
Zaleski Dos Santos.
I'm going to give myself a check for that one.
Pretty close. You know what? I've come to realize you're fairly good with European names. You deal with a lot with golf, so obviously you've seen some names, and North American names quite good. But it's the Brazilian and Portuguese names.
Well, you don't see a whole lot of Portuguese or Brazilian golfers.
Exactly. I mean,
or
that's
football
your
players
problem
or baseball players. Like, I'm not into soccer, so it's killing me here.
This is a full card full of them, so we'll see how you do.
Probably not well. So here's the thing. We have Dos Santos at 9,600 and then Dalby at 9,800. And on Kountermove, they're the exact same price. Yet I look at the odds. Dalby is a minus 350 favorite. That makes him one of the biggest favorites on the card. So is daily fantasy wrong or is the betting line wrong?
Well, the betting line actually surprises me a little bit. I knew that he'd be the favorite, but minus 3.5, and I'm sure by fight time it'll get up to minus 400, does seem a little bit steep. Nicholas Dalby has not fought in the UFC before, so this is his respected debut. And the problem with guys making their debuts is we don't really know how they're going to react. His opponent, exact same boat here. So whereas Dalby's a Cage Warrior, he's a former Cage Warriors welterweight champion, the last title holder for that organization. He's fought 5 rounds before. He has good cardio. He has good finishing ability. He should win the fight, but the minus 350, I'm not so sure. At $9,800, I do actually like Dalby. As I mentioned, he has that finishing ability, but he's known more for cardio and taking fights into the later rounds and beating his opponent that way.
Mirsad Bektic. I'm like dyslexic. That's really bad. Versus Lucas Martins. And again, this is separated by...
It's actually Lucas Martins.
All right, so... This is a really bad start for me.
I know. You got a double buzz there. I'm not sure if you've ever got a double buzz before.
No, it's the first time on the Pat Mayo Hour for doing a lot of this stuff. So, separated by $200 each on both sites, yet minus 370 versus plus 280 in terms of betting line. So, is the betting line off or is daily fantasy off?
Well, Mirsad Bektic, this is the only problem with Bektic, is that he is an absolute stud. Only 23 years old, fights out of American top team. Sky's the limit for this kid. He's extremely good. His biggest asset is his wrestling ability. However, my God, the guy does not finish anything. His last fight, he fought Paul Redman. He was a 9-1 favorite over Paul Redman. The fight went all 3 rounds. There was times where he was lying on Redman where I'm thinking, like, just pop your head up and punch him. Now he's young, now he's learning. So the biggest knock on Bektic is I like him, and I think there's some good value here.
So 9,800 is a price you would jump on?
Yeah, in Kountermove, 4,700. It's a good price in being that I really think that Mirsad Bektic is going to win this fight. However, I'm not certain on how many points he's going to score. So we will go over the teams later, and I have Bektic on both. However, if I'm going to try to switch somebody out, that will be the guy, because I don't think he's going to finish this fight. I do, however, think he'll get between 3 to 5 takedowns. He'll get 10 guard passes. He'll get about 35 significant strikes. So that'll all add up, and if the price is right, then go for him. It seems to be right here, but I'm not expecting a finish by no means.
DraftKings and Kountermove have this one flip-flop. So on DraftKings, Alex Oliveira is the favorite at 10,000, and KJ Noons is 9,400, yet it's flip-flopped on Kountermove. Noons is 5,000, Oliveira is 4,600. So which one's right, which one's wrong?
Yeah, I'm going to say Kountermove's right on this one. When I was doing my DraftKings lineup, I couldn't really justify paying for either guy. I mean, they probably will score a fair amount, and that the fight will be a stand-up war, but it's very close for a reason. I mean, if you look at the betting line, it's very close. Minus 130 Oliveira versus plus 110 for KJ Noons. KJ Noons has far much more experience. I mean, he is a much more experienced fighter. Has a win over Nick Diaz back from the Elite XC days. He fought in Strikeforce. He's been in the UFC for, a fair bit of time now. So he's a pro boxer, was a pro boxer. So he's good standing. Alex Oliveira is a guy that came out of left field in his last fight against Gilbert Burns and impressed people in that fight against Gilbert Burns despite losing. So the fact that now he's all of a sudden the favorite over a proven veteran in KJ Noons is surprising for me. I didn't like the value on DraftKings. They were both kind of near that $10,000 $1,000 range. However, KJ Noon's $9,400, on DraftKings. I couldn't justify it on Kountermove, but $9,400 on DraftKings. The reason why I don't mind it necessarily is that even if he loses the fight, he's going to lose the fight in a stand-up position, which will allow him to score. That pro boxing experience is going to allow him to score. His ability to just take a punch and weather will score him. And I just feel that he could theoretically knock Alex Oliveira completely out if Oliveira overcommits to something.
But what are the chances that he gets knocked out?
I'm saying very, very low.
Okay.
I'm thinking very, very low, only because KJ Noons, if anything, can take one hell of a punch. And I've seen him in fights with guys like George Masvidal and Donald Cerrone, where he took an absolute beating. However, he takes the beating and he stays the course. He's got a very, very good chin on him. In his last fight, he wasn't necessarily taking big shots, but he was losing before an eye poke inadvertently stopped the fight. He's kind of been known to leave his hands open a little bit and poke guys in the eye. So that was his last fight, but I'm not looking past that. If you look at him predominantly in his strike force, the time that he spent in strike force, I know it was a little while ago, but if you look at him, he's just the gutsy type of fighter that goes for it. Now he's a little bit older. However, the thing is that I don't think fighting is everything to KJ Noons. I think he mostly does it recreationally, like
for a paycheck.
For a paycheck, and so by no means is he going to be a world titleist. At no point is he going to challenge for a world title at this point in his career. But he's the type of guy that can go in there and have a fun, exciting performance and lay it on the line. And that's the kind of style that you're going to need if you're going to beat a guy like Alex Oliveira, who also wants to stand and throw. So I'm leaning KJ Noons, and I think there's value in DraftKings for that.
Wendell Oliveira, what are the
3 Oliveiras on the card.
Is Oliveira like Smith in Brazil?
Yeah, it's funny. That's basically what it is. However, there's not a whole lot of Smiths in the UFC. Lots of Oliveiras.
Well, there's a lot of Brazilians.
There's 3 of them on this card, and those aren't the only 3 of them.
Well, it seems like every 3 weeks there's a card in Brazil. They must be running out of guys at some point.
Yeah, it's funny because Dana White once famously proclaimed that Canada was the mecca of MMA.
I don't think so.
No, because they hardly have any cards here. The support seems to be wavering back and forth. Ever since George has stopped fighting, you don't really see much. Flip side to that, Brazil, they'll support basically anything. So, Goiania, let's see how you like MMA.
Wendell Oliveira, Darren Till, $9,900 and $9,500 on DraftKings. Kountermove, they're the exact same price. So when we get into these coin flip situations, I always like to get your take on whether you feel like one guy actually does have a substantial advantage over the other one. Is that the case here?
You know what? I did not put Till on any of my cards, but last night I'm looking at some fights. I'm reading some stuff on both guys. I'm checking out some tape, and I like Darren Till. I like him for a number of reasons, but in this fight, he matches up extremely well with his opponent, who Wendell Oliveira is a Muay Thai specialist, and he had one fight in the UFC, his own one in the UFC, and he got knocked out by Santiago Ponzinibbio in a minute and a half. So that was at 170 pounds. Now he's decided to drop down to 155. But still, you're coming off a knockout in the first round in your last fight. That doesn't bode well for you. Now, flip side to this, Darren Till, born in England, but has fought most of his fights in Brazil. So it's not like there's going to be any type of jet lag. It's not like there's going to be any type of, uncomfortability. Darren Till is basically Brazilian at this point in his life. And what I really have to say here is that Darren Till is a stand-up specialist as well. Now, the greatest thing I saw was UFC does these little questionnaires for the guys, right? And everybody fills it up, and it's always like, how did you get into fighting? Oh, mostly because I got bullied, or
I was a bully.
Yeah, or how, this and that. This Darren Till guy, they're like, why did you get into fighting? He's just like, so I could beat people up. And they're just like, the second one, they're like, okay, well, who's your biggest hero, like, in the world? He's like, myself. And they're like, what does fighting in the UFC mean to you? He's like, everything. Now I get to show everybody that I'm the greatest 170-pounder on the planet. And I love confidence. And this guy screams confidence. So you got 2 striking specialists against each other. Till's undefeated. Wendell Oliveira's coming off a knockout loss in the first round in his last fight. Even though he's coming down to 155, this one should be messy. It should end early, and I have Till winning it. So I did not initially put him on my Kountermove for DraftKings team, but I will work him in because I have a feeling he's probably going to get the finish.
So you do expect a quick finish in this fight, maybe either way?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say either way. However, with Wendell Oliveira, he has 7 losses. So you can look at it and be like, oh, he got knocked out in his last fight, and he has 6 other losses. With Till, he's undefeated. So people always ask me, like, oh, is he going to get knocked out? I don't know. He's never been knocked out. So for all I know, he could have a concrete jaw. For all I know, he could have a glass jaw. I don't really know. However, I always give them the benefit of the doubt because he's undefeated for a reason. I believe he's 12-0 or 11-0. However, I definitely have Till here, and I wasn't big on him a couple days ago. I thought, UFC newcomer, still very green in the sport, but he's got a lot of confidence, and I'm starting to have a little bit of confidence in him, so we're going with Till.
The biggest discrepancy between any 2 fights between the 2 sites is Norman Parquet versus Francisco Trinaldo.
Yeah, Norman Park.
Really?
Yeah. You got Francisco Trinaldo, though.
Well, that's an easy one. That one's phonetically spelled for me. So, Park. Why the E? He's not French, is he?
Northern Ireland.
Okay, that's fine then.
Yeah.
All right, so they're just not saying the letter. I'm good. So
Exactly.
we know he's tough, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But he's 11,000 on DraftKings. He's only 4,600 on Countermove. And then it's flip-flop the other way. Ronaldo, 8,400 on DraftKings, 5,000 on Countermove. So I'm guessing Park should be the betting favorite because he is at minus 225.
Yeah.
It seems like on Countermove, he's an absolute must-have.
Yeah, I have him on Countermove because he's very well priced, and I do think he's going to win the fight. I would avoid Ronaldo on both ends. He's not somebody that typically scores well. He prefers to hold guys up against the cage, take them down, grind them a little bit. I don't think he's going to score enough to justify the amount you're paying for him. The issue with Norman Park, he probably will win the fight. However, well, two issues for him. One, he doesn't score, typically as well. He's the kind of guy that holds you up against the fence, gets a takedown, works a little bit of mild ground and pound. Doesn't really go for submission attempts.
Playing for decision.
He plays for decision. If you look at his recent history in the UFC, he has one finish in his last number of fights. He's not a finisher by no means. So I can't really pick him on DraftKings. It's too much. Now on Countermove for 4,600, I want to take that gamble on him that at the very least
even if he wins by decision on Countermove at 4,600, then it becomes worth the pricing.
Exactly, and there's both guys have fought similar level of opponents. Norman Park's coming off a loss to a guy named Gleison Tebow, who's basically a mirror image of Francisco Trinaldo, but still not Gleison Tebow. They're not the same guy. Flip side to that, Trinaldo, he can be outworked. That's the key to beating him. Is he's very, very muscular. He's an older fighter. You can outwork this guy.
Get him gassed?
Yes, and Park, at the very least, has a very good ability to work a substantial pace. So I think Norman Park's able to break him down, and maybe, just maybe, he can pull a Michael Chiesa, mount him, pound him out with strikes. I don't see it happening. However, for the $4,600 on Countermove, I think, okay, he can get 5 takedowns, he can get 35, 40 significant strikes, he'll be able to get some guard passes. Who knows, maybe a submission attempt thrown in the mix. So 4,600, I like it. Flip side to that, on DraftKings, I don't see the value.
That's fair, because he's one of the most expensive players.
Absolutely. 11,000, I mean, it's quite a bit.
All right, so the next player who's above the $11,000 threshold is the main event, Condit versus Elvis.
Nice.
Not the racist dragon from Flight of the Conchords. Oof. But still, he's in the main event. That's pretty good. So Condit, $11,100, $5,500 on Countermove. Title fight, 5 rounds?
Just 5 rounds because it's a main event. No title.
Okay. That's what happens if it's main event, it's 5 rounds?
That's what they switch it to. Main event and title fights, 5 rounds.
So do you see a finish here? Like, it's minus 270 for Condit. Like, he should win, right?
Well, Condit's been off for over a year with a knee injury. I mean, he blew the knee out during a fight with Tyron Woodley and now has been out for over a year. So the knock on him would be, as we always talk about people coming back from knee injuries, you don't really know where they're going to be at. I think he's going to rebound. Knee surgeries in 2015 is not like knee surgeries from your father's age.
No.
It is completely different. So we've seen athletes, high-level athletes, come back from knee surgeries in the past, seem to be basically all there. If Carlos Condit comes back 85% as good as when he left, he's going to knock out Thiago Alves. And that's not a knock to Thiago Alves, but Thiago Alves is a guy that took off 2 years of his own career with brain, he had like a brain hemorrhage, and then after that he had a really bad back, and now he's kind of getting older up there as well. He's not the same Thiago Alves. In his last fight against Jordan Mein, he was taking a beating, and then in the second round, he lands a body kick. Jordan Mein goes down, everyone's shocked. They're like, wow, bit of a lucky win. Carlos Condit is a much more refined version of Jordan Mein. He's very long. His striking is off the charts. And he has the ability to take basically any punch or kick. So, barring that his knee blows out, I think he's going to be very in control of this fight. And I do see him getting the finish. Not in the first round, but by the second, third, maybe fourth round, I see Carlos Condit getting the finish. So I know that he's expensive on Countermove and DraftKings, but he's a must-have for me, and I did play him in both lineups.
Okay, Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz.
Lentz.
I remember the name Nick Lentz. Probably because it has a Z in it, but, these things stick out to me. $8,000 on DraftKings, though. He's the cheapest guy on the board. Like, if he has any sort of chance of either going all 3 rounds or maybe even sneaking out a win, like, you kind of have to have him, don't you?
He could sneak out a win. However, if he's going to sneak out a win, he's going to take Charles Oliveira down. He's going to stay really tight inside the guard, and that's going to be about it. Probably win 2 rounds, maybe 3 rounds, but that's his key to victory here. So if he's going to win, he's not going to score a whole lot. Now, for $8,000, it's like, yeah, why not? The big knock on this fight is that these guys have already fought before. When they fought before, Charles Oliveira was wrecking Nick Lentz, absolutely wrecking him. And then Nick Lentz had a knee down. Charles Oliveira kneed him in the head, which is an illegal move in the UFC.
Oh, DQ!
DQ? No, it was a no contest, actually.
Oh.
They just decided to rule it nobody wins in this fight.
Well, that's not good.
But if you're watching the fight, you're really thinking to yourself, wow, Nick Lentz is taking a beating here. So now the fight gets rebooked to happen, okay? It's like, all right, this fight's going to go down. It's going to go down. They weigh in, and Charles Oliveira gets really sick at the weigh-in. He's too sick, can't fight. So the fight gets canceled. Now it's rebooked, and it's supposed to happen. So with Charles Oliveira, he's a 145-pounder, but at 5'11", he's kind of too big for the weight class, I find. I think moving back up to 155 is in his near future. So he doesn't cut the weight particularly well, and that could really hurt him. Nick Lentz is a former wrestler out of Minnesota, so you know he can cut weight. You know he's totally fine with that. And his wrestling ability might be able to just completely grind Oliveira. I'm leaning Oliveira, and if Oliveira's going to win, he may be able to finish. However,
he's the most expensive player this week at $11,400 on DraftKings, so he's probably a stay away there. But
at DraftKings, yes. On Countermove, $4,900, I do not mind that.
That's the thing. Like, would you take him on your Countermove team?
Yeah, because the beauty about Charles Oliveira is when he's standing, he throws with bad intentions and he throws with lots of volume. You can take him down fairly easily, but when you take him down, he is a machine off his back with submissions again, and you get points for submission attempts. So I think he can score standing, he can score off his back. That's fine. For $4,900, I like it. For DraftKings, I really need him to get that finish. And because I'm not certain that he is going to finish one Nick Lentz, who has gone the distance with great guys, including Chad Mendes recently, then I can't justify it as much. So yes, for Countermove, I could definitely see it for $4,900. Not so much on the DraftKings end.
All right, so now we need to figure out who's going to get some quick finishes here. Do you see any that pop out right away on this card?
Well, I don't necessarily think finish, but UCR Formiga de Silva, right? This is a guy that used to be the number 1 ranked flyweight in the planet.
We're just calling him Formiga.
Yeah,
that's
Formiga.
How we do here.
That's it, man. Actually, a lot of people just call him Formiga.
Boom! I know these trends apparently.
Exactly. You're in the know now. Plus, it's a lot easier to pronounce.
This is true. It's not even written. His real last name isn't even written on my sheet.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Most people, I'm sure, think that Formiga is his last name. But Formiga's matched up with Wilson Hayes, who's a high-level black belt as well. Now, Wilson Hayes is going to try to grind him. However, grinding Formiga is very, very difficult. Good thing you didn't have
I would have said Reese.
Yeah, well, I mean, not everywhere in Brazil, but a lot of parts of Brazil, they pronounce the R as a H. So
they also pronounce the J as an H, too.
Yeah,
it's all very confusing.
And that's not all of Brazil. That's certain states in Brazil. So.
Yes, I would guess towards the southern part of Brazil, where there's probably more Spanish influence than Portuguese influence, you would then get... I don't even know.
Who knows? Who knows? That's a history lesson for another day.
That's true.
Paul Shaughnessy was a history major. Maybe he knows these things.
He's not an etymology major.
That's good.
He's not a history of languages major.
But he is the Mel Kiper of reality TV.
That's true. He's in on reality TV. We know that.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think Formiga's going to completely dominate. And even if he doesn't get the finish, there's a good possibility he does get the finish. But even if he doesn't get the finish, he's at 125 pounds. These guys are extremely fast, extremely explosive. And the amount of transitions and strikes that they land add up in points. Now, if you are looking for a finish, this Tom Breeze fella, he's from England. He's 6'3". Now he trains full-time in Montreal at the TriStar gym, same gym that Georges St. Pierre came out of. His opponent at 5'11" is a little older, Louis Dutra Jr., a little bit older, hasn't fought in over a year. In his only fight, he also got disqualified with illegal elbows to the back of the head.
Does anyone ever get disqualified for pulling out an illegal object?
Oh, that'd be great. If it was going to happen, you would assume it would happen in Goiania, Brazil, or some shady part of Brazil. But all jokes aside, Tom Breeze has got such length, and at 7-0, he's finished all of his pro fights. He's fought at a good level.
Only $9,500 on Countermove too.
Yeah, 95. Well, DraftKings. Yeah,
DraftKings. Sorry, $4,800. They're the same on Countermove. And Breeze is an underdog on DraftKings.
Yeah, I do like Breeze here. Breeze is if
he's
anything,
a betting favorite too. That's strange.
Very strange. At the very least, he's a little bit green at 7-0. But like I said, this is a guy that uprooted his career, moved from England all the way to Canada to train at one of the best gyms, and a gym that you're going to be able to get a lot of attention. So I think Faraz Zahabi's doing a very good job with him. He's a purple belt under Faraz Zahabi. I like Tom Breeze here, and if anybody can go out there and just maybe land a couple good shots, get a submission, or land some good shots and knock the guy out, I think Breeze, for his value, I don't mind it.
The last fight I want to talk about, because it's not offered on DraftKings, and DraftKings has been doing a much better job of getting the fight pass in the prelims onto their ticket.
Yeah.
But I guess this one just kind of fell through the cracks. So it's Jason Jackson on Countermove. Jason is $5,300. Jackson is $4,300. Do you feel strongly either way in this fight?
Well, Honey Jason, this guy is all power. I mean, if you see him, they call him Jason for a reason. He comes out with the Jason Mac, because really his name is Hani Bezerra, but you know how it is in Brazil. We'll just give him a nickname like Formiga, and he can roll with that. So now he's Honey Jason, and this guy's got a lot of power. I mean, he's knocked out some fairly credible opponents, but as I mentioned, at 31 years old, he's as good as he's going to get, and I really like his amount of power. Now, the flip side to that is that Damon Jackson is dropping down to 145. His UFC debut was at 155 pounds, and he didn't look great in his debut, but dropping down to his natural 45 should help him out. He's a submission stylist, so he's going to try to take down Honey Jason. If Honey Jason can stuff it, Honey Jason probably knocks him out. If Honey Jason gets taken down, he's not going to score well for you. But I did definitely go with him on Countermove, $5,300. He's not available on DraftKings, but for $5,300, is as you mentioned a minute ago. You said let's decide some of the guys that are going to get the finish. And when I look at this card, there's only 2 guys that scream finish to me. Carlos Condit and Hani Jason. He could get taken down, and that would be bad for him, but he's got good takedown defense and great power. I think he's one of those guys that can land and get the knockout, so I do like Hani Jason.
Let's get to your DraftKings and Countermove team. It's been 4 weeks in a row. They have won in cash games. And to say the difference between a cash game and a GPP, a guaranteed prize pool, is in a cash game, half the field wins. So even if one of your guys goes down a bit early, you can recover if you have good enough picks for the rest of your 4. In a GPP, you need to have a perfect lineup, basically, if you're going to win the big money, because you're facing 5,000 other people. So these are cash game lineups, not GPP lineups, the ones that you feel most confident with. So let's go DraftKings very quickly. You're going Condit at the top.
Yeah, Carlos Condit. I know it's 11,100, but like I said, he's a guy that screams finish, so I don't mind that whatsoever. The natural-born killer, they call him that for a reason, Carlos Condit. Second fight, we're going to go Husier for Amigas. Once again, he's so much faster than Wilson Hayes. He's a very high-level degree black belt. I think that he's going to be able to work him, maybe get the submission, but even if he doesn't get the submission, he's going to get on his back, and Hayes is going to be wearing him like a backpack all night long.
Bektic.
Mirsad Bektic, $9,800. I don't think he's going to get the finish, but once again, he's going to get a takedown, and he's going to move from guard to half guard to side control, back to half guard,
like center,
back to guard.
Center to half back,
exactly.
to half back to center.
Mount to back mount, goes through rear naked, bails on the rear naked, lands 2 punches. He's not going to get the finish, but he probably will work his opponent and score points in the process. Tom Breeze, $9,500, at 6'3", he's extremely big for the weight class, and I think that under the tutelage of Faraz Sahabi at the TriStar Gym, he's going to be firing on all cylinders. Like I said, a little bit green at 7-0, but I think that he's a guy that could be one of my, oh wow, Tom Breeze scored me 100 points because he got a second-round finish. He could be that guy for me. And rounding it off, KJ Noons, $9,400. I think he's got a good chance of winning the fight, but at the very least, he's going to be one of those guys that in defeat is going to be on his feet for the majority of the time. Alex Oliveira will not take down KJ Noons, therefore KJ should score a lot standing, and I like him here.
Your Countermove.com team is a little bit different. You have one of the Oliveiras, Charles.
Yes.
So he's on there at 4,900. You went with Jason, Honey Jason at 5,300. And then you have Park, not Parquet, it's 4,600 to be able to afford Condit at the top.
That's exactly it. You need a couple cheaper guys, and I looked at Bektic at 4,700 and thought, well, that's great value. So even though I'm not confident that he'll get the finish, I like the value. Now, Norman Park, 4,600, as we talked about, I also don't think he's going to get the finish. But if these guys are working their opponents over and they're going to score me around that 50-point range, that's fine, because that allows me to score, allows me to afford guys like Carlos Condit and Hani Jason, and they'll score the bulk of my points. So I like that lineup.
Cody Saftik, check him out on the Bookie Beatdown on the Fantasy Sports Network and the Fight Network. You can follow that on Twitter at Bookie_Beatdown on Twitter, which I suggest you do if you'd like to win some money on the MMA fights. And who wouldn't want to do that? I win money. I don't even know what I'm talking about. He does. That's why I listen to him. Anyway, you can follow me at the PME on Twitter and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Hour on YouTube and iTunes. Pat Mayo. See you next time.